In January 2020, Elon Musk revealed new details about his plan to build a city of 1 million people on Mars by 2050. Elon said he hopes to build 1,000 starships, the towering and ostensibly fully reusable spaceship that SpaceX is developing in South Texas over 10 years. That's 100 new starships per year. As our scientific knowledge has advanced and the questions we seek to answer have become more complex, science has become more specialized. What about nutrition science? Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. We are hearing this line too often. This is the old proverb from Hippocrates. Studies not only underline the therapeutic potential of lifestyle interventions, but are also generating valuable insights in the complex and dynamic transition from health to disease. But unfortunately, this has been used for years as a marketing strategy by food and pharma industry and much more. What should we eat in order to stay healthy and avoid disease? Nutrition is one of the biggest drivers of chronic disease, including obesity and diabetes. Yet the answer to this seemingly simple question remains a subject of heated debate. Earlier, I told you about the old proverb of Hippocrates. There are debates on this saying also. Some researchers are saying that it was not found in any of the Hippocrates' writing. Some are believing that it is said by him only. But this video essay is not about proving if Hippocrates said that or not. It is to discuss about the fact that why is nutrition science so complicated. Today, our greatest health problem relate to overeating. Now overeating here refers to eating too much of low quality food, bringing on chronic disease like cancer, obesity, diabetes and heart disease. So how we ended up here? In 1747, a Scottish doctor named James Lind wanted to figure out why so many sailors got scurvy, a disease that leaves sufferers exhausted and anemic with bloody gums and missing teeth. So Lind took 12 scurvy patients and ran the first modern clinical trial. The sailors were divided into 6 groups, each given a different treatment. The man who ate oranges and lemons eventually recovered, a striking result that pointed to vitamin C deficiency as the culprit. This sort of nutritional puzzle solving was common in pre-industrial area. Many of the troubling diseases of the day, such as scurvy, pellagra, anemia, and goiter, were due to some sort of deficiency in the diet. Doctors could develop hypotheses and run experiments until they figured out what was missing in the people's food. Puzzle solved. The number of studies exploring the link between food and health has grown substantially over the past 50 years. But the extent to which growth in information has been matched by greater understanding is questionable. Navigating the vast evidence base is challenging, even more so when concerned about weak science, vested interest, and conflicting or distorted media messages also muddy the waters. If people understand and get onto some conclusion, it is still hard to follow as food is central to culture and identity, which leads to strongly held preferences, beliefs, and biases. By developing a better understanding of nutrition and resolving long-standing disagreements with respect to key health research questions, we can develop much better dietary guidelines and related policies. This cannot happen too soon because there are multiple factors affecting our body. Even in the best controlled trials, it's hard to isolate the effect of nutrition from all other factors that affect our health, like age, climate, sex, microbiome, stress level, food preferences, addictions like alcohol and smoking, physical activity, genetics, sleep, hormones, and much more. How to make sense of nutrition study? Evidence is a useful thing. Instead of cherry picking, just analyze everything. Creating, collecting, and curating the risk knowledge is the main aim of this research. How to analyze the research, especially in nutrition science. After doing research on this topic, I want to share how to make sense of so much of health information. There are many aspects of nutrition out of which these parameters always help in growing your understanding of nutrition science. The first one is history of modern research. As Carl Sagan said, you have to know the past to understand the present. The most important thing is to look where did the study start. What was the actual idea or purpose behind that? Looking at the past of nutrition science is necessary to have maximum benefits of modern research. Food innovations have created every manner of better eating through to chemistry. The research started from isolating the vitamins for specific disease, and recently they have developed food replacement pills. Yes, you heard it right. They claim that food replacement pill is a vehicle that optimally delivers energy, micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals to your body. The combination of food pills replaces traditional meals, which give you a way to lose weight. And it sounds awful to me. Let's take an example on history of supplementation. What was the logic to the development and application of that supplement? Casimir Funk in 1913 came up with the idea of vitalamine in food, originating from the observation that the hulk of unprocessed rice protected chickens against a beriberi-like condition. This vitalamine, known as vitamin, was first isolated in 1926 and named thiamine, and subsequently synthesized in 1936 as vitamin B1. So, the first vitamin was isolated and chemically defined in 1926, less than 100 years ago, ushering in a half century of discovery focused on single nutrient deficiency disease. No doubt these researches result in tackling conditions like beriberi, pellagra, scurvy, pernicious anemia, rickets, and other deficiency conditions. But as one of the greatest accidents of nutrition history, this new science and focus on single nutrient and their deficiencies bring the policymakers to a point. According to many nutrition researchers of modern era, Dr. Jason Fung, Robert Lustig, Gary Taubes, eliminating or decreasing fat from our diets as per the new dietary guidelines in 1970 to 80 has led us to the obesity and diabetes epidemic. It was a result of single nutrient focused study. Seemingly good idea is harming people. Recent advances in nutrition science have shown that food and diet patterns rather than nutrient focused metrics explain many effects of diet on the non-communicable disease. Second one is measurable health benefits in short term versus long term. In one of her talk, Dr. Julia Ruckledge, a clinical psychologist, explores a range of scientific research showing the significant role played by nutrition in mental health or illness. There's been a fourfold increase in the number of people who are on disability as a direct consequence of an underlying psychiatric illness. The rates of mental illness are on rise. Currently, our healthcare system operates with a medical model. In some cases, these treatments save lives, but if a treatment is truly effective, so shouldn't the rate of disorder be decreasing than increasing? That's why we need to consider the role that medications might be playing in some of these outcomes. This report examines 36-month outcomes. 2 years after treatment by the study ended, there were worse outcomes over 36 months. Dr. William J. Walsh has worked with 30,000 patients with conditions ranging from autism to schizophrenia to Alzheimer's. He wrote in his book Nutrient Power, "Psychiatry has made great advances in the past 50 years, but needs a new direction. Today's emphasis on prescription psychiatric medications will not stand the test of time. A fundamental limitation is that psychiatric drugs are foreign molecules that result in an abnormal condition rather than producing normalcy. There is nothing wrong in reconsidering the fact based on their results in short term versus long term." The third one is correlation and causation. Correlation is when two factors or variables are related, but one does not necessarily cause the other, while causation is when one factor or variable causes another. Does red meat cause heart disease and cancer? Or do the people with these problems just happen to eat more red meat? Or if there are some other variables like overall health consciousness that affects both our likelihood of eating red meat and to have a heart disease. Say, for example, a study found that increased BMI seems to be associated with an increased risk of several cancers in adults. Again, we might be misled by this. It would be erroneous to conclude that simply being overweight causes cancers. Instead, we need to consider other potential variables that might explain the relationship between increased BMI and increased risk of cancer. This type of research helps us find patterns and signals and can raise new and interesting hypotheses. But let's remember that there may be a big gap between correlation and causation. Claims that such and such food prevent such disease are very different from the claims like compound in such food prevent or cause disease. Let's take an example of resveratrol in the wine, the compound which was supposed to increase longevity. Unfortunately, you need to drink 1000 bottles of wine to have those benefits. Saying red wine give you a health benefit is like saying you get a health benefit from being punched in the head from a boxing glove coated with vitamin E. The fourth one is funding source of the research. Nutrition studies are often funded by interested parties. Even if intentions are good, this can bias results. Let's look at the study, Can Sugary Drinks Lead to Weight Gain? The studies done without financial conflicts says yes in 83% cases, while the studies with the financial conflicts says yes only in 17% of the time. A study was done to explore relationship between funding source and conclusion among nutrition related scientific articles. The main finding of this study is that scientific articles about commonly consumed beverages funded entirely by the industry were approximately 4 to 8 times more likely to be favorable to the financial interests of the sponsors than articles without industry related funding. Above all, none of the interventional studies with all the industry support had an unfavorable conclusion. Studies can easily be designed to shine a light on potentially positive findings. We are seeing only findings. What about known findings? If the interested party doesn't get the desired result, do you think they are going to publish that? I don't think so. We don't take known findings seriously enough. In the Hooper study of dietary fat and randomized controlled trials, there are 11 out of 12 known findings which we don't even talk about. We continuously talk about one findings of cardiovascular events which when put under scrutiny itself fold away. The points I have shared will not always bring you to the conclusion, but it will always help you in growing your understanding of nutrition science. It will help you in looking for the observable truth in matters where there's a lot of poor assumptions and misdirections. Every mile you go in the wrong direction is really a 2-mile error. Unlearning is twice as hard as learning. So be careful while you spend your precious time in learning something new. Here's a friendly suggestion for nutrition and health expert and fitness enthusiast. Acknowledge the diversity of reasons that determine what we eat. Food choice is a personal matter. Nutrition research is conflicting at times, so systematic reviews are the best to refer to for higher quality evidence. Rather than fighting the latest diet fad, support the positive changes a person is making that are moving them towards eating better. Few people maintain any diet to the latter after a few months. Final and most important one is widen the scope of health and fitness. Don't box yourself into a narrow space of health as promoted by food and weight loss industry. Consider the factors like economic, social, environmental, and historical, and how do they predispose populations to non-communicable disease like obesity, diabetes, etc. And never stop learning.